Now let's take a closer look at a big news story. And frankly, this week we chose the continuing evolution of VMware as our closer look story. Of course, we've spoken quite a lot about this recently, but things are happening here that I think we should talk about. So, in a series of bold moves, Broadcom is restructuring VMware. They're shifting to subscription only licenses across everything. And Broadcom CEO Hock Tan has clearly moved his vision of VMware to focus on resiliency, on developer efficiency, on infrastructure efficiency, and basically tried to focus the company on those specific markets instead of doing all the things that VMware used to do. He recently outlined three key strategies for VMware: radical simplification, R&D investments for on-prem and private cloud solutions, and enhancing the overall VMware ecosystem while also focusing things on these areas. What that means, unfortunately for many, is that products are being discontinued right and left. The model is changing. The way that companies interact with VMware is changing. And frankly, it's affected a lot of people in the industry in terms of their jobs being lost. The discontinuation of products includes the ARIA SaaS offerings, Carbon Black, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Also the recent announcement that they're going to divest their end user computing, and this is all a way to streamline VMware and focus it on these bundled suites of private cloud and public or cloud software. The reactions are mixed, but it is interesting to see this strategy come together. Now that you're starting to see these things, Ned, what is your take overall?
I think there's a lot of risk whenever you make big moves like this. You said bold moves. They are certainly bold, and that's neither good nor bad necessarily. I think part of this was very necessary for VMware to continue to evolve and change. They had stagnated to a certain degree, and their product portfolio had become a bit bloated, and their SKU list had certainly become incomprehensible to the average mortal. So part of what Hocktan and the team at Broadcom is doing is rationalizing that portfolio, saying instead of having 50 SKUs where everybody can have exactly what they want, we're going to narrow this down to the most popular, 4 or 5 SKUs, and you can pick amongst those, and that's it. you can't you can't make your own deal. And at the same time, he looked at the product portfolio and said, okay, some of this just needs to go away, and we need to reorganize the stuff that's actually profitable for us and that makes sense to continue developing and researching for. Now, to a certain degree, a lot of the technologies that VMware sells, specifically like the vSphere portfolio of products, they're mature at this point. I don't expect another vMotion or another vSAN to come out of this. To a certain degree, it's a solved problem, and all the research and development is just going to be incremental improvements. But they definitely have the potential to expand into new opportunities. One of the business units they've created is looking directly at application and network security, and another portfolio is specifically around Tanzu and expanding out into cloud native and Kubernetes type workloads. Those are definitely growth areas that they could work on. But some things had to end up on the chopping floor or on the cutting room floor. And one of those was Carbon Black. So for those who are not familiar with Carbon Black, it's a security product, mostly around endpoint based security. And they were acquired by VMware. A decent, I don't know the exact date on that, but they were acquired by VMware a while ago. And they were never really integrated into the rest of VMware's product portfolio. They were kind of held at arm's length. And for that reason, it was pretty easy to decide to do something different with them. Initial reports were that they were going to be sold off to a private equity firm or just to go independent. And it looks like now they've decided to keep it in-house and fold Carbon Black into Symantec to reinforce and buttress Symantec's endpoint offering. So that's one aspect. Stephen, I know another big area was EUC and their Horizon and Workspace ONE products. Do you have thoughts on what's happening with that?
Well, I think that the EUC situation and the Carbon Black situation are very similar in that Hock Tan specifically, Broadcom generally, found itself with in a few markets that it didn't really want to be in with VMware. As you say, I mean, VMware was really had a broad SKU or a set of SKUs. It was many different products, many different market areas. Some of them it was more successful than others. I mean, Carbon Black was by all accounts a good product, but was not a world-beating product. And I think that maybe they looked at it and said, yeah, this doesn't have the growth that we need. Then there's the end user compute business unit, which has always been sort of a funny kind of stepchild for VMware anyway. I mean, truly, it made a lot of sense for VMware to be in the EUC market because, well, virtualization. I mean, it seems like a good market, but the EUC market really isn't that big. It's not growing. It's one of those things where if you were going to cut something, it kind of makes sense that that might be what you would cut. But that being said, it is a solid product. It makes a lot of sense, and there are a lot of buyers out there for it. So okay, so they're going to take that and they're going to spin it off. And specifically, they found a buyer for that. Unlike Carbon Black, the rumors are that they were asking $1 billion for Carbon Black, which is actually a little less than half of what they spent for it just a few years ago. With end user compute, which is again a more stable business with recurring revenue and lots and lots of customers. Reports say that they're going to have about $3.8 billion to go take this to a private equity firm, KKR. Now, KKR is already in the enterprise space. I know of them because we've covered them here, having acquired Barracuda Networks. We also talked about them acquiring Cloudera and BMC. So there is maybe a little overlap here, but it makes sense that this is maybe where the product would go. But I expect that KKR's moves with the EUC product are going to be very similar to what Hock-Tan is going to do with the core VMware product, right? They're going to focus it. They're going to, make sure that they're serving the customers. They're getting that recurring revenue, and pretty much that's what they're doing, right?
Yeah, and there's always a concern when private equity buys a technology that they're going to go into rent extraction mode. So product development will basically halt and they will just maintain the customers base that they have today. And if you're expecting massive improvements and upgrades to the technology, you may want to look elsewhere. That remains to be seen with the Horizon portfolio of products. The VDI space, like you indicated, is not that big, and there's not that many major players in it anymore. It's really come down to all the clouds have some form of VDI. AWS has their, I think it's called Workspaces. Azure has Azure Virtual Desktop or Azure VDI. And then Citrix has their own cloud, or you can deploy on one of the other clouds. And then there's Horizon. So it's like 4 solutions out there are the big heavy hitters. And if you are currently on Horizon, Horizon leveraged a lot of VMware's technology under the hood to do the virtualization portion of things. And it's going to be very difficult to extract what Horizon does from the VMware product as a whole and re-platform it on anything else. So if you are a Horizon customer today, you're probably also locked into VMware. And while that was an advantageous arrangement when they were the same company, that may change as your licensing changes for each of those 2 different products. So definitely time for a little evaluation if you're on the Horizon product today and determining if that's where you want to be in 6 months to a year.
Yeah, and I imagine that some people will decide that they want to move on, but I imagine that some people will say, you know what, this product works for us. It's ingrained. It's something that we're happy with. We're going to continue using it.
Oh,
Frankly,
yeah.
you know, despite all the rage, sounds like I'm going to sing a song. Despite all the rage, I see a lot of people still using VMware vSphere. I see a lot of people still using Horizon. I see a lot of people still using BMC and Barracuda. And a lot of these products, Symantec, that people have said, oh, private equity or Broadcom's buying these. It's the end of the world as we know it. Again, singing a song. It's the end of the world as we know it. We better switch to a different product. People don't really switch. A lot of the time, these products are good. They do the job. They're what the people need. Frankly, in some cases, you look at Horizon, you look at vSphere, you look at Barracuda. These are very good products, maybe even best of breed products for their specific market segment. So why would you switch just because you're mad because a private equity company bought it? That doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Usually the loudest voices around switching are the poor admins that are responsible for managing this stuff, and they're like, oh god, it's just going to get worse, and they get really concerned. But the people who actually make the decision to whether or not to switch have to do a financial analysis of the switching cost to move from, say, vSphere to Nutanix or Scale or something else, and that switching cost can be extremely high. And if switching it isn't going to fulfill some sort of business requirement and the new licensing agreement isn't particularly onerous, then the decision is going to be no, we're just going to stay on this platform that we know that works and not incur this additional cost that's providing no business benefit. You're just doing this out of spite. Your CFO is going to go, no, that makes absolutely no sense to me. We're staying on VMware unless it becomes painful enough not to.
Yeah, most honestly, most good CFOs and COOs don't do things out of spite. Now, clearly, some CEOs do,
Yes.
but especially CFOs, they're kind of not spiteful. They're kind of like, no, this makes sense. This is what we're going to do, and I think that that's roughly what's happening here. I do expect these products to change and evolve as the market evolves. I expect that the market will maybe move past some of these products. Carbon Black never really found the footing that VMware expected it to have. And so, well, that's that. But overall, things don't change. I had the experience this last week at AI Field Day of spending a lot of time with a lot of analysts in the industry, as well as a lot of end users and industry insiders. And it was interesting. The talk, of course, was a lot of the talk was about VMware and what's going on with VMware. And the interesting thing I found was the statement one of the people made, which is essentially all the customers that Broadcom wanted to keep have already been contacted. They've already built a transition plan. They've already adapted licensing. They've already figured out how they're going to continue working with them. And from what I'm hearing, those customers are actually pretty happy with what Broadcom is doing. In many cases, they're streamlining licensing. They're giving them a better product for the same amount of money, probably not less money. But they're, basically they're happy with the transition. I'm even hearing from some VMware insiders that are happy with the transition. They're basically saying this makes more sense. I see what we're doing here. It doesn't feel like we're going in all sorts of directions. Of course, I'm hearing from VMware insiders who are very, very not happy with the transition because they've lost their job or they've lost the product that was their baby. And I feel so much sympathy to them. But I would say that overall, what I'm hearing from insiders and analysts reflects what we were just talking about here, which is, frankly, things change. Hock Tan is making a lot of changes at VMware, and not all of those changes are bad.